well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment.
So as you know, I recently attended the Gun Owners of America Goals event.
Yeah, you were out adventuring without me.
Yes, I did. I was really looking forward to it, actually. This was only their second annual event. It started in 2024.
Yeah, so let's tell them what it is.
Gun Owners of America sponsors the event. They don't sponsor it. They put on the event. They have some sponsorships. I believe Brownells and Palmetto State Armory are two of their major sponsors for the event.
Excellent.
And it's similar.
And GOAL stands for
Gun Owners Advocacy and Leadership Summit.
Yep.
I'm pretty certain that's what it stands for.
That rings a bell. You told me originally when we were discussing going together, and now I think I recall you saying that that's what it stood for as well.
Yep, it was in Knoxville, Tennessee. It was a great event. The event was technically a 2-day event, Saturday and Sunday, and similar to when you and I attended the USCCA event a few years ago in Milwaukee. They had several rooms set aside with speakers.
Yes, like breakout sessions.
Yes. John Lott Jr. spoke on a couple different occasions, and he would have his time, and you were able to sign up and go listen to him speak, and there was plenty of that going on at the USCCA event. This had some of that, not quite to the extent, but what they did have, they called it the main stage. And for the most part, Saturday and Sunday, it was one speaker after the next, anywhere from a 10-minute block to a 45-minute block. And there was a couple governors, there was social media influencers, there was people affiliated with goals.
During those, were there breakout sessions going on, or were those sort of like blocks of time where as long as you wanted to be in attendance, that's the only thing going on?
There was a few breakout sessions, but the main stage was where most of those people were speaking.
Okay.
And then there was downstairs at the convention center, there was approximately 125,000 square feet of what I call convention booths.
Okay.
Where they have the different vendors and manufacturers setting up to either showcase a new item or what they offer. I did go see, if you remember, and I apologize, I forgot to bring, I got you a pack of the Target tags.
Oh, yeah. I actually was thinking about that. I was like, I wonder what Joe got for me. Okay, yep.
And so I got you a package of them. I went and saw Ben from Target Tack, who was my very first interview at my first SHOT Show, and spoke to him. I got 2 packages, so you can put a package in your range setup and one in my range setup.
Thank you, Joe.
Absolutely. And it was nice to chat with him. So there was a lot of some of the big guys, Daniel Defense, nice setup, Palmetto State Armory, a very large display area, Gun Owners of America right in the middle, beautiful setup. People were doing book signings. I mentioned John Lott Jr., he spoke, and he did a book signing. There were a couple others.
All right.
So it was a great event, and there were some break-off, I'll say meetings, one of which I attended, and that one specifically was Midwest region of the country for people that want to be more involved with promoting and standing up for our nation's Second Amendment and what it stands for. So that was nice. I, again, met some great people, very passionate people, and it was definitely worth going. And fortunately, I think as it gains popularity, the convention itself, how many vendors and whatnot, I think that's going to continue to grow. From what I understand, this year was a little bit bigger than last year.
Okay.
And they're already talking next year being 150,000 square feet as opposed to 120,000, which is nice because for somebody like me that is very interested and very passionate, there's still all sorts of booths that just aren't anything that I am interested in stopping for one reason or another. At this one, there were a lot of companies that manufacture suppressors. And as interested as I am in them,
Yes.
being that we can't have them here,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of reason for me to stop and engage.
It's torture.
In it, right.
Why would we subject ourselves to that?
But I guess that's an interesting segue, too, because that $200 tax stamp just got removed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gun Owners, GOA, Gun Owners America, was very key in lobbying and bringing that into the court system in order to help get that tax removed.
Yeah.
And I'm smart enough to know not to put very much weight into a lot of what I see on social media because it's Thunderdome from an opinion standpoint, right? And it's interesting because I feel as though when I went to this event, I learned a lot, but what I learned was more in depth of what I already knew, if that makes sense. And one of those things is that Gun Owners of America, from a Second Amendment protection standpoint, 100% compromise free. There is no point of view that wavers from standing up for it, sticking up for it, and trying to regain what has already been lost.
Okay.
Because we've talked a few times where we've made strides go in the right direction, but there's a lot of laws throughout the country on the books that really do infringe on our right to keep and bear arms.
Yeah. Yeah. So they basically, they don't cede any territory.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's our natural given right, and if you want to restrict it in any manner, their point of view is you're wrong, and they're going to put up a fight for it.
Yeah. And that's something that really, knowing you, that really is going to appeal to you.
Very much so. Very, absolutely. And something I knew through just, reading, and we had John from the GOA on the podcast, I think at the beginning of the year in January, and he stated that membership of the organization is key. And I think so often, understandably so, people hear sign up for a membership and the immediate reaction is a money grab, trying to get money.
Yeah.
And I guess in a sense,
yes,
they are. They're trying to get money. What I really gained a deep understanding of at this event is how expensive it is to sue the government.
Oh.
And that's essentially what Gun Owners of America, the organization, is doing daily. They're also lobbying, but there's literally dozens of lawsuits through the country over and over and over again, trying to get our right restored to the extent that they think it should be. Yeah. And the extent they think it should be is pretty much in line with where I think it should be. So I'm a member. I encourage people to sign up. And don't get me wrong, there's other great organizations out there. FPC, I believe that's a Firearm Policy Coalition.
Yes. Thank you.
There's the Second Amendment Foundation, and they're doing a lot of the same thing. And obviously the big one, NRA, right? And I think there's a lot of people from conversations I've had, there's a lot of people that are more optimistic about some of the leadership at the NRA current day than maybe there have been in some of the recent years past. And I belong to at least 3 of those organizations. Definitely NRA, definitely GOA, I believe FPC, if my membership hasn't expired, but I think it's auto-renew. So there's a part of me that also feels, instead of putting all the eggs in one basket, when there's several of these organizations, and recently they've teamed up on plenty of these lawsuits that they've brought forth.
Good.
And I think that's sometimes having more than one front going up to battle for us is good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the possibility that somebody will stumble upon some kind of magic sauce that'll work better because it just is a different organization with a different synergy, could help.
Yeah, and the fact that they start in a different area, there's different people, and so much of this stuff is based on access. What politicians do you have access to lobby, to sit there and say, our organization is X amount of people, and this is what you're representing for us. and this is what your constituency wants. Having that ear, that microphone to get to whether it's a governor, a state rep, whatever it is important. So I think the more organizations that are actively doing that, the better off we are. One thing I did learn too, and I've always questioned a little bit when I've heard somebody from any organization say, well, if you see something that you don't like, call your governor, call your senator, I've always questioned, does that make a difference? Does it even matter? I listened to several of the speakers of the politicians, and they all said to do that.
Yeah.
That they do. They if they're in their office and on some days the phone's ringing more than it normally is, they'll ask, what are all the phone calls about today? Oh, a bunch of people are calling because they didn't like Bill HB so-and-so. So I would encourage anybody and everybody to send emails and make those phone calls.
I've heard that from Democrats and Republicans as well. Like,
Yeah,
the
both
representatives say, like, we really do listen to, and that it is a big influence on how they vote.
Yeah, and that was
Because they're like, well, I have to because that's how I stay in office.
correct. Absolutely. And I hope not just to stay in office, but because they realize they're our employee and that's what their bosses, being society, that's what their bosses want.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as our employee, go do what, we hired you essentially to go do. And I'm very excited to say next year Goals is in Des Moines, Iowa. So it'll be that much closer, maybe a little bit more convenient if you want to join me next year.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, very excited. So it's good. It's supposed to be
Yeah, I
bigger.
would like to do that for sure.
Yeah, it's supposed to be bigger and closer. So that should give us hopefully a chance to go. And I encourage people to go. It especially the one I was just at. If it's something that you can't make a weekend of or don't want to spend the whole weekend there, because it's not like the NRA show, which was 40 acres under roof, something like that. If you wanted to, you could probably get through the convention area in one day. It'd be a long day, but you even if it's just a stop on a road trip, I encourage people because there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to see and there's a lot to learn. Not to be redundant, but what I did learn is the importance of membership, of getting people to sign up and become a member of the GOA, which they make extremely affordable. I don't remember all the details, but I want to say you can become a member for like $25.
Okay.
And I believe that's for a year. We were talking a little bit before we started recording this. Anymore, that's 2 cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
That's not, that's not too much. And then, of course, there's different levels. You can sign up to be a lifetime member. I think they do a Premier or Platinum. You can do a $10 a month donation. But if your situation and your preference right now is, yes, I'd like to be a member, you can start doing that with $25.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It is. And what's really interesting, if you go to Gun Owners of America webpage, they list a lot of information there. Court cases that are current. One that was scrolling across the bottom, GOA and I believe GOA/Azell v. State of Illinois, which Rhonda Azell was one of our guests.
Yeah.
So GOA was involved with helping her with her lawsuit, and that was critically important on several levels, but one, that helped break the door open to get CCL
In Chicago.
in Illinois.
Yeah.
So that it was a little ironic to see that. It made me smile. But they also have a great tool on the website, if I recall correctly, where they but they rate the level of 2A cooperation they get from politicians. So if anybody is going to vote and the protecting our right through the Second Amendment is important, it's a great tool to be able to go on there and see how supportive politicians have been in doing that, which everybody has their primary issues on any level they're voting for, whether it's school district, city board, state. I know there's a lot of people that protecting that civil liberty is a high priority, and that's a great option to explore.
So, who'd you see? What stands out for you, whether it be the vendor fair or conversation?
So, Representative Thomas Massey,
Oh, yeah.
it really made me appreciate the fact that there are some individuals in the big stage, and I don't even mean that stage, I mean the stage of politics, that really are fighting for us. Because I'm very skeptical of so many politicians because there's pandering in order to gain an extra vote. So to know that some of it isn't just lip service, that somebody uses firearms, that carries a firearm, that understands and appreciates what the Second Amendment really means. And we've talked several times about how the real meaning of the Second Amendment gets skewed so often in politics. It's become a political football to serve one purpose or another.
Yeah.
But the real meaning of it is really simple. It is really basic. Our society is allowed to keep and bear arms. That's what it means. And it doesn't say what for, and it doesn't say what the limitations are, because there aren't supposed to be any.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear somebody working in Washington, D.C. that shares the passion of that, I get a little excited. Clint Morgan, and then they had Ashley Habinski. She's the curator of the Cody Firearms Museum.
Right, yes.
And I went to go listen to what she said, and I was very excited. I didn't know much about her previous to that, but again, she has a real passion, and she is a firearms expert, specifically the history of firearms. And she gets called to as an expert witness in several court cases. And as we all know, a lot of law is based on history because precedents get set. And she gets called in on a regular basis to speak of what is common use and what may have been meant. And I was very excited. I would love to have her on the podcast.
Yes, yeah.
as a guest.
Yeah, let's do it. That's fascinating.
The other one that I was really excited to meet was William K. Kirk, Washington Gun Law.
Yeah, I've been following him for a while. I think there's so many things I've failed at. I meant to reach out to him months ago to see if we could get him on. He's made some trips here to Illinois.
He has.
But you finally had a personal contact with him, right? It's amazing that there's so many really, really dedicated, great people out in the world doing great things.
I agree with you.
Inspiring.
And that was something I took away from, as I'm driving home, is that it's not just me and you in your basement that are trying to reach out to some people, that there's lawyers. Tom Greaves was there, another attorney. I spoke to him very, very briefly. The critical part about this to me is that it's not about owning a gun. It's about the right to be able to have a gun. And that's as critically important to people that don't want guns, because they still have that right. And I think that's where a lot of times the pro-gun society kind of gets it wrong. And I don't want to say gets it wrong, but they're off the path a little bit, because this whole thing that we do, as far as the podcast and the website, it's about our civil liberty. It's what our founders made sure those civil liberties are protected. And they haven't, I don't want to say they haven't been protected, but they aren't as well, they're not able to be exercised as well as they were intended to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And whether or not, again, I think most people would say, the Fifth Amendment right, your right that is protected by the Fifth Amendment to not incriminate yourself. That's critically important. And I agree, it is. The freedom of speech. I mean, if we don't have the freedom of speech, we have nothing.
Yeah.
That's crucially important. The right to privacy, where the government can't just come into your house because some officer driving down the street thinks you might be doing something wrong. They can't just knock down your door and see if they were right.
Mm-hmm.
That's also critically important, but so is the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
what the Second Amendment is supposed to protect is critically important. And I want people that don't want a gun because they don't think that they could maybe be responsible enough. I want them to still feel as though the right to have one is critically important.
That's very interesting. And I think something that maybe might clarify your thinking, or at least for me, there seems to be a connection. I think that being rational is a part of being a human, but it's not always the main part of us. I think that we are mostly emotional, and we had a group of people that created this country that believed in doing their utmost to try and be hyper rational. It was part of their movement that they were deeply immersed in, was this idea that you should try to be as rational as possible in your decisions and in the things that you are planning to do and doing.
I agree with that.
So there are links in their logic. They're a chain, and I think that's what you're trying to point out. Whether it's your freedom of speech, which is basically to let other people know your mind, that you sort of this chain of logic, that you own yourself, that you own your thoughts, and if you own yourself and you own your thoughts, then you also need to be able to protect the ownership of yourself and your thoughts. And so there was this link in a chain, and the chain should not be broken.
Correct.
They were put there, and they were reasoned and inserted for specific purposes. And I think that is what you're.
That's a good way to surmise some of those thoughts that I probably didn't vocalize very well.
You can't have freedom of speech and freedom of mind and freedom of owning yourself without the ability to protect it.
Correct. And I have seen repeatedly politicians use the emotions, especially maybe when they're raw emotions, because maybe there was some sort of travesty that had been committed, and use those raw emotions to convince people that
a certain link in the chain is
not necessary.
It's not necessary, or less necessary, or should be limited.
Yeah.
That's the big one, it seems like.
Right. But
should be limited somehow.
But my notion is that limitation that some people want doesn't end. The limitation is 0 guns. And if it takes, one step at a time to get there, then every one of those travesties is a current they're going to use to try and get closer to removing all firearms.
I don't even think that 0 guns is ever the goal. I think it's just with some people with guns.
Such as who?
I seldom hear anyone say we're going to eliminate guns entirely. What I hear people say is I'm going to eliminate certain people from having guns. So our military will always have guns. Our law enforcement.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Certain people and certain kind.
And certain kind.
So just keep tightening those restrictions.
Yes.
To the point where.
And somehow, if only the U.S. Army and only the police force had weapons, we'd have an ideal society.
Do you think that?
I don't.
No, I didn't think so.
I think the opposite.
Yeah, in fact, obviously not in this country, but everywhere that has been implemented, some bad things have happened.
Problems arise, yes.
So there is 0 proof that works, and there's a lot of proof that it doesn't. So I'm on the side because right now we know it doesn't.
It's the same philosophy that, it's the communist philosophy, right? If you could have just a few people making all the decisions for the economics of a society, that it would work, and it doesn't. Because when you diffuse all the decision making out amongst millions and millions of people, things just happen to turn out. No one knows what's better for Joe Dano than Joe Dano.
And that we've seen that proven time and time again.
And when someone else is making those decisions, whether Joe Dano should have a gun, whether Joe Dano should do this, whether Joe should do that, this, that, or the other, it doesn't work out so well for Joe Dano.
Right.
And that's the whole thought about that Enlightenment group, about individualism, and that only Joe knows what's best for Joe.
Yes. But I also think that gun ownership has become such a political football that there's a lot of times it's used by people and they're probably indifferent. They may not really want to take away as many firearms, but they know it stirs up their base on the Democratic side, and the goal is to stay in power.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, on the Republican side, the goal is to also stay in power. But that's why when I see a Tom Massey on stage and he's saying what is in my head, it's refreshing. It's refreshing to know, then to look at his votes to say he's not just saying it. He's along the same ideology I have. He just happens to be in a position to be able to do more about it. And that's why listening to some of those speakers was uplifting.
Yeah.
So some of it really was.
Yeah. It's interesting that, a thought came to my mind that no one in the gun community is forcing anyone to own a gun.
Right. Encouraging, teaching.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Educating, but the other side wants to restrict you from having one.
Yeah, and I think that's where, and I'm not quite sure where it developed, and I hate to sound narcissistic because I'm going to talk about myself for a moment, but I can't remember how far back, but I know I was young. And my notion was always, don't tell me I have to do something, because I know I have options. Some of the options might not be good, but I may want to choose that option just because I have the ability to make that option.
Strong streak of independence.
Yeah, but maybe that's what it is. But I think we need that. I think we need people thinking for themselves. I think we need people. Honestly, what I think a lot of it comes down to, Lee, is the ability to properly communicate has been diminishing for a long time.
Can you explain that?
Sure. On a very regular basis, somebody will say something. I'll give you an example. Not too long ago, I was at a party, and it was a Saturday, and one of my friends, which we do on a regular basis, said I want to do a guys' dinner. We have a group get together. He goes, I want to do it this week. I'm like, this week, not going to work. He goes, we can make it work. I'm like, impossible. He's like, we'll make it work. I'm like, really? Because today's the last day of the week. So we're already at dinner. So how are we going to have a guys' dinner this week? He's like, you're an asshole. You know what I meant. And I did know what he meant, but that's not what he said. And I think that when people say exactly what they mean, then you have an exact understanding of what they mean. The more we leave up to interpretation, or the more we use a phrase, we go, well, you know what I meant. I believe it was 2021, maybe 2022, the big defund the police movement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right around that time frame, right?
Yeah.
And my whole thing was, it's a terrible idea. You can't defund the police. I had plenty of conversations. You want to defund the police? Terrible idea. What do you do when you get rid of the police department? Well, we don't mean get rid of the police department. Well, if you defund them, how do they exist? They need the funding. There's police cars, there's salary, there's training, there's everything that goes along to run a police department. What we mean is reduce some of the funding and redirect it. That's not what you said. Mm-hmm. You said defund. If you want to redirect, then say redirect. If you want to reduce, say reduce. Because here's where I think some of that goes. Defund the police. What we mean by that is redirect. So, okay. Yeah, I'm on board. Defund the police. Then you get enough people on board to fund the police. And then they try and defund the police, and people are like, well, wait a minute. I don't want to defund the police. But look how many people signed up. This huge organization represents all sorts of people that want to defund the police.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's not what they thought you meant. You said, no, we've been saying defund the whole time. So when you offer confusion, it gives you more wiggle room.
It's a consequence of being sloppy with your speech, is what you're saying?
But intentionally.
Yes, okay. That's the part I was trying to drive at.
Right. But it's intentional, because then when you go to defund the police, you can say, we've got this organization with 80,000 people just in Cleveland that want to defund the police. We got to get rid of them. 79,700 of those people don't want to defund the police. Mm-hmm. They want to take some of the money and use it for better training.
For other things, yeah.
Or use it to, instead of hiring a new officer, get, maybe a psychiatrist or psychologist that can, go to some of those calls. There was a lot of talk of that. Mm-hmm. But that's not what defunding means. So I think that some of the ambiguity or sloppiness in the speech, especially when it's intentional.
Purposeful obfuscation of using speech to accomplish things, using speech to trick people.
Yeah, right. They're lying.
In some cases, yeah.
Tricking, lying, and that's what I mean, and why I say we have to communicate better. And that seems to be a bit of a dying art, because there seems to be a lot of that. Well, you know what I meant.
Yeah, when I first came home, and I won't recall the podcast or where I listened to someone talk about the fact that we have lost, this is there's a postmodern sort of take on this. I'm thinking of a philosopher, Paul Virilio, that talked about the speed of society, that our progress has resulted in a society where everything is faster. And then, so what I heard about is this man talking about the concept of deliberating. And he said that to his mind, it doesn't seem as though people deliberate anymore. So we're not really thinking about what's being said to us. So when someone says defund, we hear something, it provokes an emotion, but we're not really thinking about the specificity of what that word means, because we're not deliberating on it. We're not taking the time and giving the thought to the speech. Our outputs, what we're saying, aren't deliberated, and the things that we're taking in aren't thought about. And he spoke about it more in the realm of what you do in your life as far as like projects are concerned. Like how many people are really deliberating and thinking about, I'm going to do this properly and completely, and do it in a way that's meaningful. And I think that maybe is part of what you're thinking.
It's right along the same lines. The notion it's good enough, using your, seems to be very prevalent.
Yeah.
And that would go along the same lines, where it's not necessarily deliberate, where that action, when completed, would leave no question. There's a lot of times, I feel like, 90% complete is good enough. And I think the more that sort of stuff happens, and the less proper verbiage we use, it just leads to, again, ambiguity. But I think in politics, I think a lot of it's intentional. And so that was one of the, let's go back to conceal carry. I believe it was April of 2020. Our Jagoff governor, J.B. Pritzker, implemented a mask mandate in the state of Illinois, temporary to, to flatten the curve. And you know as well as I do, probably better, Illinois is one of two states that when you're carrying a concealed firearm, you are not allowed to wear a mask or do anything to help conceal your identity. And that actually came up not too long after J.B. Pritzker implemented that mask mandate. I remember the state police had a press conference. I forget, I'll never be able to recall the individual's name that was behind the podium. And that came up. And his answer was something along the lines of, it is going to be a case-by-case basis at the officer's discretion on whether or not that's a violation. And my immediate thought on that was, if I go into court and I tell the judge, I thought I'd be okay, it's very simple for him to go, it doesn't matter what you thought. This is the law. It's written down. So you're not allowed to conceal your identity while carrying a firearm. If you're going to conceal your identity, don't carry a firearm. And he'd probably be correct.
Yeah.
By definition, right? And I looked at that as one additional way that J.B. Pritzker was violating his oath to uphold the Constitution, because that's a direct violation of the Constitution that Illinois has and the process I went through to get a concealed carry license. And the court, as a good rule of thumb in general, because things are black and white, they don't want that ambiguity. That's why everything is written down. That's why there's precedents. That's why there's laws on the books, because we're not, in a lot of these cases, we're not supposed to be able to make a decision. It's written down. And I think the more we go through life not leaving things up to interpretation, the better off we are.
That was deep.
So as far as the GOA as an organization goes, I obviously am a supporter. I'm going to really encourage people to be a supporter of it. And it's a great tool to go to their website, Gun Owners of America. Becoming a member is very easy, but the resources they have on their website, I think most of our listeners would really be interested in it. There's news, but anytime there's a vote, it's a great resource to check and see how Second Amendment friendly a politician is. And I really like that aspect of it, to basically be a more informed voter. And that's never a bad thing.
For sure.
The website for GOA is gunowners.org.
Yes.
And that's where you can find some of that really, really valuable information. That's where you can sign up and stay in touch with upcoming events. Signing up for goals and attending goals. I mean, this year flew by. So I'm assuming goals 2026 will be here before you know it.
It is going to come fast. But let's plan it out and let's both go, and maybe there's a way we could podcast from there this time.
Yeah, that'd be really great.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool.
Gotcha.